My neighbors kept dumping trash on my lawn. They didn't know I was their landlord. I was standing on my front lawn at 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, staring at what looked like the aftermath of a small explosion at a garbage truck depot. 3 black trash bags had split open across my pristine St. Augustine grass, spilling coffee grounds, moldy takeout containers, and what appeared to be the remnants of someone's failed attempt at cooking spaghetti. The cherry on top. A dirty diaper that had somehow landed perfectly on my prize-winning rose bush. This was the 4th time in 2 weeks. I'd moved to Maple Grove specifically to get away from inconsiderate neighbors. After 3 years of apartment living where thin walls meant I knew entirely too much about everyone else's personal lives, I'd saved up enough for a down payment on this little craftsman bungalow. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, a quiet street lined with oak trees where the biggest drama was Mrs. Henderson's ongoing feud with the HOA about her garden gnome collection. Instead, I was dealing with mystery trash dumpers who apparently thought my yard was their personal landfill. I pulled out my phone and took another round of photos, adding them to the growing folder I'd labeled evidence. 23 pictures so far, documenting everything from pizza boxes to broken picture frames to something that might have once been a houseplant but now looked like it belonged in a horror movie. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, Jake Morrison, owner of 3 rental properties across town, dealing with the exact kind of problem that made landlords gray prematurely. The difference was, this time I was on the receiving end, and I had no idea who was responsible. My Ring doorbell had captured part of the action around 2 a.m., 2 figures in hoodies hauling bags across the street under the dim glow of the streetlight. The video was too dark and grainy to make out faces, but I could see they were coming from the duplex directly across from me. Unit A or Unit B, I couldn't tell, but at least I'd narrowed it down. I bought that duplex 18 months ago as an investment property. It was one of my first purchases after I'd gotten serious about real estate investing, right around the time I'd landed my promotion to senior analyst at Morrison Financial. The irony of having the same last name as my company wasn't lost on anyone, but I'd earned that promotion through 60-hour weeks and a portfolio that consistently outperformed expectations. The duplex had been a steal at $340,000, a foreclosure that needed cosmetic work but had good bones and sat in a neighborhood where property values were climbing. I'd hired a property management company, Sterling Property Solutions, to handle the day-to-day operations. For $200 a month per unit, they took care of tenant screening, rent collection, and maintenance requests. It was supposed to be hands-off income while I focused on my day job and scouted for more properties. Clearly, I was getting what I paid for. As I bent down to collect the scattered garbage, again, my phone buzzed with a text from my property manager, Dave Chen. Rent collected from both Maple Grove units. All quiet this month. I looked up at the duplex across the street, then down at the moldy Chinese takeout container in my hands. All quiet. Right. That's when I heard it, the unmistakable bass thump of music starting up at 7:45 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, rattling the windows of what I now realized was Unit B. This was about to get interesting. The music was loud enough that I could make out the lyrics from across the street. Something about heartbreak and tequila, delivered at a volume that suggested my mystery neighbors had either never heard of consideration for others or had completely given up on the concept. I pulled up Dave Chen's contact info and hit call. It went straight to voicemail. Dave, it's Jake Morrison. I need you to call me back about the Maple Grove duplex tenants. There's been some issues. Call me as soon as you get this. While I waited, I decided to do some detective work of my own. I'd been hands-off with my rental properties by design. I didn't want to be the landlord who showed up unannounced or got too involved in tenants' lives. But standing in my yard holding a bag of someone else's rotting garbage at 8 in the morning had a way of shifting priorities. I pulled up my property management portal and navigated to the Maple Grove duplex files. Unit A was rented to Maria Santos, a 34-year-old nurse at Mercy General who'd been there for 8 months. Her application had been pristine, credit score of 780, references from her previous landlord that praised her as quiet and responsible, and a security deposit paid in full upfront. Unit B was a different story. Tyler Brennan, 24, and his girlfriend Ashley Martinez, 23. Tyler worked at a local auto shop and Ashley was listed as between jobs on the application from 6 months ago. Their combined income barely met the 3x rent requirement, but they'd had a co-signer, Tyler's dad, who owned a construction company and had agreed to guarantee the lease. The rent was $1,200 a month for each unit. Not cheap, but fair for the neighborhood. According to the file, Unit B's rent had been late twice in the past 4 months, arriving on the 8th instead of the 1st. Dave had noted it but hadn't charged the late fee since it was within the 10-day grace period. I was starting to connect the dots when my phone rang. Dave. Jake, hey, got your message. What's going on with Maple Grove? I just drove by there last week and everything looked fine. Define fine, I said, watching a pizza box blow across my front yard. Because I'm standing in my own driveway looking at trash that's been dumped on my lawn 4 times in 2 weeks, and it's coming from my tenants across the street. There was a pause. Wait, you live across from the duplex? I didn't know that was your address. Yeah, well, surprise. And right now there's music blasting loud enough to wake the dead, at 8 in the morning on a Tuesday. Tell me more about how quiet things have been. I could hear Dave typing on his keyboard. Okay, let me pull up the complaint history. Huh. That's weird. I don't show any noise complaints filed for that property. Because I didn't know I was supposed to file complaints against my own tenants. I thought I was dealing with random inconsiderate neighbors. Unit A or Unit B? I looked across the street. The music was definitely coming from the left side of the building. Unit B, Tyler and Ashley. More typing. Right, okay. They've been, well, they're not problem tenants exactly. Rent's been on time, mostly. But now that you mention it, I did get a call from someone in the neighborhood about a month ago. Complained about loud parties on weeknights. I made a note to drive by, but when I did, everything seemed normal. What time did you drive by? Around 2 in the afternoon. I rubbed my temples. Dave, the parties happen at night. The trash dumping happens at 2 a.m. You're not going to see anything during business hours. The music across the street suddenly got louder, as if someone had opened a window. A male voice shouted something I couldn't make out, followed by laughter. You know what? I said, watching a beer can roll down my driveway. I think it's time I introduced myself to my tenants. Dave's voice took on that careful tone that property managers use when they're about to tell you something you don't want to hear. Jake, I appreciate you wanting to handle this personally, but I'd recommend letting me deal with it through proper channels. We don't want any liability issues if... Dave. I cut him off as another beer bottle came sailing out of Unit B's second-story window, landing with a crash on the sidewalk. I'm watching my tenants literally throw trash out their windows right now. At 8:30 in the morning. On a Tuesday. The proper channels aren't working. I ended the call and pulled up my tenant files again, this time looking more carefully at the lease terms. Standard 1-year agreement, $1,200 monthly rent, $1,200 security deposit. But buried in the clauses was something interesting. Section 12.3 explicitly prohibited disposal of waste or debris on any part of the property grounds except in designated receptacle areas. Violation could result in immediate lease termination. More importantly, Section 8.4 covered disturbing the peace or quiet enjoyment of neighboring properties. The lease specifically mentioned that violations affecting nearby residents could result in eviction proceedings and forfeiture of security deposit. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey, this is Maria from across the street, Unit A. Are you the homeowner? Can we talk? I looked up to see a woman in scrubs standing on the front porch of Unit A, waving at me. She looked exhausted, which made sense if she'd been dealing with Tyler and Ashley's antics from the adjoining unit. I walked across the street, stepping carefully around the broken glass on the sidewalk. You must be Maria. I'm Jake. I decided to keep my landlord status to myself for now. Rough morning? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Rough 6 months. They've been getting progressively worse. The parties used to just be weekends, but now it's basically every night. And the trash. She gestured toward my yard. I've seen them dumping stuff over there. I kept meaning to leave you a note or something, but I work double shifts and barely have time to sleep. The music from Unit B suddenly cut off, replaced by the sound of arguing. A female voice, Ashley, presumably, was shouting something about uptight neighbors and calling the cops. Have you? I asked. Called the cops, I mean. Maria shook her head. I tried once, about a month ago. By the time they showed up, the party was over. The officer said unless they caught them in the act, there wasn't much they could do about noise complaints. And honestly, I was worried about retaliation. These walls are paper thin, and I have to sleep during the day sometimes because of my shift schedule. What about your landlord? Have you tried contacting them? I've left 3 messages with the property management company. They keep saying they'll look into it, but nothing changes. I'm actually thinking about breaking my lease early. I found a place closer to the hospital anyway. That stopped me cold. Maria was exactly the kind of tenant every landlord dreams of, responsible, quiet, stable income, took care of the property. If Tyler and Ashley's behavior was driving her away, I was about to lose $1,200 a month in reliable income and probably have to spend money finding a new tenant. A door slammed upstairs in Unit B, followed by heavy footsteps on the stairs. Tyler appeared on the front porch, wearing nothing but boxers and a stained tank top. He was holding a beer, and it definitely wasn't his first of the day. Maria, he called out, his words slightly slurred. You complaining about us again? Mind your own business. He spotted me standing next to her and his expression shifted. And who the hell are you? I smiled and pulled out my phone, opening the camera app. Jake Morrison. I live across the street. The one whose yard you've been using as your personal dumpster. Tyler's bloodshot eyes narrowed. Prove it. I held up my phone, showing him the folder full of photos. Already have. Tyler squinted at my phone screen, swaying slightly on his feet. Even from 15 feet away, I could smell the alcohol radiating off him. At 8:45 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. That could be anybody's trash, he said, taking another sip of his beer. You got no proof it was us. I swiped to the video from my Ring doorbell. Actually, I do. Want to see yourself hauling bags across the street at 2 a.m. last Thursday? His confident smirk faltered for just a second before returning full force. Whatever, man. It's a free country. Maybe you should invest in better security if you're so worried about your precious lawn. Maria stepped closer to me, lowering her voice. He's drunk by 10 a.m. most days. Ashley works the evening shift at some restaurant, so she's usually passed out until noon. Then the cycle starts all over again. I can hear you, Maria. Tyler shouted, though he was swaying enough that I wondered how long he'd stay upright. You got something to say it to my face. I'm saying it right now, Maria called back, and I could hear 8 months of frustration finally boiling over. You're a drunk, your girlfriend's a slob, and you've made living here miserable for everyone else. Tyler's face flushed red. He started down the steps toward us, stumbling on the second one and catching himself on the railing. You want to run your mouth? Maybe I should. Maybe you should what? I stepped forward, putting myself between Tyler and Maria. I had 6 inches and probably 30 pounds on him, and unlike Tyler, I wasn't drunk before 9 a.m. Finish that sentence. He stopped, seeming to realize for the first time that he was standing in his underwear, holding a beer, threatening a nurse in front of a witness with a camera. Whatever alcohol-fueled bravado had carried him this far started to evaporate. Just stay off our property, he mumbled, backing up a step. Funny you should mention property rights, I said, pulling up Dave Chen's contact info on my phone. Since you seem so concerned about them all of a sudden. I hit call, putting it on speaker. Dave answered on the second ring. Jake. Look, I was just about to call you back. I've been going through the complaint logs and... Dave, I'm standing here with Tyler from Unit B right now. I think it's time we discuss lease violations face to face. There was a pause. You're with Tyler. Right now. That's right. He's here in his underwear, drinking beer, having just threatened one of our other tenants. At 8:45 in the morning. On a Tuesday. Tyler's eyes went wide. Our other tenants. What the hell does that mean? I smiled at him. Tyler, meet Dave Chen from Sterling Property Solutions. Dave, say hello to Tyler. Hello Tyler. Dave's voice came through the speaker, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Tyler looked back and forth between me and the phone like he was watching a tennis match. I don't understand. Why are you calling my property manager? Because, I said, ending the call and pulling up my property management app, turning the screen toward him. I'm not just your neighbor, Tyler. I'm your landlord. The beer bottle slipped from Tyler's hand, shattering on the concrete steps. Maria gasped beside me. Tyler's mouth opened and closed a few times before any sound came out. That's not possible. I've never seen you before. That's because I hired a property management company to handle day-to-day operations. But Dave here seems to have missed a few things. I gestured toward my trash-covered yard. Like the fact that my tenants have been using their landlord's property as a dump site. Tyler's face had gone completely white. Look, man, I didn't know. You didn't know it was illegal to throw trash on someone else's lawn. Or you didn't know there would be consequences. Ashley's voice drifted down from the upstairs window. Tyler. Who are you talking to? Come back to bed. I looked up toward the window, then back at Tyler. Ashley should probably come down here too. We need to have a conversation about your lease. Tyler stumbled back up the steps, nearly tripping over the broken glass from his beer bottle. Ashley. Get down here. Now. I could hear muffled voices through the thin walls, followed by what sounded like someone falling out of bed. Maria moved closer to me, her voice barely above a whisper. Holy shit. You actually own this place. Language, Maria, I said with a grin. But yes. And I'm starting to understand why your maintenance requests have been taking so long to get addressed. The front door of Unit B slammed open and Ashley appeared, wearing an oversized hoodie and pajama pants, her bleached blonde hair sticking up at odd angles. She looked like she'd been asleep for about 3 hours, which, given their apparent schedule, was probably accurate. What's going on? She demanded, squinting in the morning sunlight. Tyler, why are you freaking out? And who are these people? Tyler was pacing back and forth on the small porch, running his hands through his hair. Ash, we fucked up. We really fucked up. What are you talking about? I stepped forward. Ashley Martinez, right? I'm Jake Morrison. I own this duplex. Ashley's confused expression didn't change. Okay. And you've been throwing your garbage on my lawn for the past 2 weeks. That got her attention. Her eyes darted between me and Tyler, then over to my yard where remnants of their latest dump were still scattered across the grass. Prove it, she said, crossing her arms. Apparently belligerence ran in their relationship. I pulled out my phone again, this time opening the video from 3 nights ago. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to show 2 figures hauling black trash bags across the street. I'd enhanced it using an app, and while you couldn't make out faces clearly, Tyler's distinctive limp from an old motorcycle accident was visible. That's from Sunday night. Or technically Monday morning, around 2:15 a.m. Notice the way one of you favors your right leg, Tyler. Tyler's face went ashen. He'd mentioned the motorcycle accident on his rental application, a collision that had left him with a permanent slight limp and some hefty medical bills that explained his shaky credit score. Ashley snatched the phone from my hand, staring at the screen. This doesn't prove anything. Could be anyone. Give me my phone back, Ashley. Make me. Maria stepped forward. Ashley, just stop. I've seen you guys dumping trash over there half a dozen times. I work night shifts, remember? I see everything that happens on this street between midnight and 6 a.m. Mind your own business, Maria. Nobody asked you. Actually, I said, taking my phone back, Maria's business is exactly my concern. See, she's been a model tenant for 8 months. Pays rent early, keeps the property clean, doesn't blast music at all hours or throw beer bottles out the window. I gestured toward the broken glass on the sidewalk. She's the kind of tenant landlords fight to keep. Ashley's expression shifted slightly, some of the attitude draining away. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled up my lease management app and navigated to their file. It means Maria has never been late with rent. Never had a noise complaint. Never violated her lease terms. You two, on the other hand. I scrolled through the notes Dave had been keeping. Late rent in March and May. Noise complaint filed by a neighbor in April. And now documented evidence of illegal dumping and property damage. Tyler finally found his voice. Property damage. The landscaping repairs alone are going to run about $400. New sod, replacement plants, cleaning fees. I was estimating, but they didn't need to know that. Then there's the violation fines outlined in Section 12.3 of your lease agreement. Ashley grabbed Tyler's arm. What violation fines? What's Section 12.3? Did you read your lease before signing it? I asked. The look they exchanged told me everything I needed to know. Section 12.3 covers improper waste disposal, I continued. It carries a $200 fine per incident. I've documented 4 separate incidents in the past 2 weeks. Tyler was doing math in his head, his lips moving silently. That's $800. Plus the landscaping repairs. Plus the administrative fees for processing lease violations. I was making up the administrative fees on the spot, but it sounded official enough. We're looking at about $1,400 in total damages and fines. Ashley's face had gone completely pale. We don't have $1,400. We barely scraped together last month's rent. Which brings us to the real problem, I said, closing the app. Because according to Section 15.2 of your lease, failure to pay assessed fines within 10 business days constitutes grounds for immediate eviction. The silence stretched out between us. From somewhere down the street, I could hear a lawnmower starting up and birds chirping in the oak trees. Normal suburban morning sounds that seemed surreal against the backdrop of what was happening on this porch. Tyler sank down onto the steps, his head in his hands. Fuck. Ashley, what are we going to do? She was staring at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. You can't just kick us out. We have rights. You do have rights, I agreed. You also have responsibilities. And you've been failing to meet them. I pulled out my phone and called Dave back, putting it on speaker again. Dave, I need you to drive over to the Maple Grove property right now. We're having an emergency lease review meeting. Jake, I really think we should handle this through proper channels. The proper channels got me 4 garbage dumps on my lawn and a drunk tenant threatening people at 9 a.m. How fast can you get here? There was a pause, then typing. 20 minutes. Perfect. Tyler, Ashley, you have 20 minutes to get dressed and figure out how you want to handle this situation. Ashley's defiance cracked slightly. What do you mean, handle it? I mean you have 3 options. I held up one finger. Option 1, pay the fines, clean up your act, and maybe we can work something out to keep you here under a modified lease with stricter terms. Tyler looked up hopefully. What kind of modified lease? Weekly inspections. Noise curfew at 10 p.m. on weekdays, midnight on weekends. Any violations result in immediate 30-day notice to vacate. Security deposit increases to 2 months' rent instead of 1. Ashley's mouth fell open. 2 months. That's $2,400. Which brings us to option 2. I held up a second finger. You can choose to break the lease voluntarily. You forfeit your security deposit, but you get 30 days to find a new place, and I don't file an eviction that shows up on your credit report. And option 3? Tyler asked, though his voice suggested he already knew he wasn't going to like it. Option 3 is I file for immediate eviction based on lease violations. You get served with papers, it goes on your record, and good luck finding another landlord willing to rent to you after that. Maria, who had been quietly watching this whole exchange, finally spoke up. For what it's worth, they were talking about moving anyway. I heard Ashley on the phone last week complaining about how expensive rent is here. Ashley shot her a venomous look. Nobody asked you, Maria. Actually, I said, I'm asking her. Maria, you mentioned you might break your lease early. What would it take to keep you here? Tyler's head snapped up. Wait, why does she get special treatment? Because she doesn't throw garbage on her landlord's lawn or blast music at 8 a.m., I replied. Maria. She looked uncomfortable being put on the spot. Honestly, I just need quiet. I work 12-hour shifts at the hospital, sometimes back-to-back doubles. I need to be able to sleep during the day. What if Unit B was vacant for a while? Would that solve your problem? Relief flooded her face. That would be amazing, actually. I love the apartment itself, and the commute to work is perfect. Tyler stood up abruptly. This is bullshit. You can't just kick us out because your precious neighbor wants it quiet. I can kick you out because you've been violating your lease, I corrected. The noise complaints are just part of it. But here's something interesting. I pulled up my rental analysis app and punched in some numbers. The market rate for Unit B has gone up about $200 since you signed your lease 6 months ago. If I renovate the unit, new paint, new fixtures, maybe update the kitchen, I could probably get $1,500 a month instead of $1,200. Ashley grabbed Tyler's arm. He's trying to force us out so he can charge more rent. I'm trying to run a business, I said. And problem tenants cost money. Late rent costs money. Property damage costs money. Driving away good tenants costs money. I gestured toward Maria. If Maria breaks her lease because of your behavior, I lose $1,200 a month in guaranteed income while I find a replacement. That's not good business. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave, 5 minutes away. Dave's almost here, I announced. You two need to make a decision. I'm not interested in dragging this out for months while you continue damaging my property and harassing my other tenants. Tyler and Ashley huddled together on the porch, whispering furiously. I caught fragments, can't afford, Dad's construction loan, maybe my sister's couch. Maria moved closer to me. Are you serious about keeping the unit vacant for a while? Dead serious. Sometimes the best tenant is no tenant, especially if it means keeping the good ones happy. She smiled for the first time since I'd met her. In that case, I'd definitely be interested in staying. Maybe even extending my lease if the terms were right. What would the right terms look like? Honestly? Just a guarantee that you'll screen tenants more carefully next time. I don't need anything fancy, just normal neighbors who don't party until 4 a.m. on work nights. Dave's silver Honda pulled up to the curb, and I could see him gathering a folder from his passenger seat. Tyler and Ashley's whispered argument was getting more heated, and I was pretty sure I heard Ashley mention something about calling Tyler's father. This was about to get very interesting. Dave climbed out of his car looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was clutching a thick folder and had his phone pressed to his ear, wrapping up what sounded like damage control with another client. As he approached the duplex, I could see him taking in the scene, broken glass on the sidewalk, Tyler in his underwear looking like death warmed over, Ashley in pajamas shooting daggers at everyone, and me standing there with my phone full of evidence. Jake, he said, ending his call. This is not how I usually handle tenant meetings. Nothing about this situation is usual, Dave. Tyler stepped forward, swaying slightly. Are you the property manager? Because this guy is harassing us. We know our rights. Dave looked at me, then back at Tyler. Mr. Brennan, I've been trying to reach you for 3 weeks about a maintenance request follow-up. You haven't returned any of my calls. What maintenance request? Ashley demanded. Dave flipped open his folder. Water damage in the upstairs bathroom. Mrs. Chen from a unit below yours filed a complaint about water stains on her ceiling. I left 4 voicemails asking you to call me back so we could schedule an inspection. I stared at Dave. Mrs. Chen. I thought Maria was in Unit A. Maria is in Unit A, Dave confirmed. Mrs. Chen rents the basement apartment. It's a separate unit, technically this is a triplex, not a duplex. She's been here for 2 years. Tyler and Ashley exchanged confused looks. Ashley spoke first. What basement apartment? We didn't know there was anyone downstairs. The entrance is around back, Dave explained. Mrs. Chen is 67 years old, retired, very quiet. She's been complaining about water damage for a month, but I needed access to your unit to determine if the leak was coming from your bathroom. I felt something cold settling in my stomach. Dave, why wasn't this in the property file I reviewed this morning? He had the grace to look embarrassed. The system update last month had some glitches. A bunch of maintenance requests got filed under the wrong property codes. I've been manually sorting through them. So you're telling me, I said slowly, that Tyler and Ashley have been ignoring maintenance requests that are affecting another tenant's living conditions? We never got any maintenance requests. Tyler protested. Dave pulled out his phone. I have records of calls made to 555-0147 on March 15th, March 22nd, April 3rd, and April 8th. Ashley's face went red. That's Tyler's old number. He got a new phone last month. Did you update your contact information with the property management company? Silence. I'll take that as a no, Dave said, making a note in his folder. Mr. Morrison, I think we need to do an inspection of Unit B right now. If there's been water damage for over a month. Tyler stepped back toward his door. You can't just come into our apartment without notice. Actually, I said, pulling up my lease app again, Section 9.1 allows for immediate inspection in cases of emergency maintenance or when other tenants' units are being affected. I looked at Dave. A 67-year-old woman dealing with water damage for a month sounds like an emergency to me. Absolutely, Dave agreed. Tyler, Ashley, we're going to need to inspect your bathroom right now. Ashley crossed her arms. And if we say no? Then I call Mrs. Chen and ask her to document the water damage for a potential lawsuit against the property owner for failing to address habitability issues, I said. Which would be me. So no really isn't an option here. Tyler's shoulders sagged in defeat. Fine. Whatever. But the place is kind of a mess. That turned out to be the understatement of the year. The smell hit us as soon as Tyler opened the front door. It was a combination of old beer, rotting food, and something that might have been a dead animal. The living room looked like a tornado had hit a frat house, pizza boxes stacked 3 feet high, beer cans covering every surface, clothes scattered everywhere. But it was the bathroom that made Dave actually gasp out loud. The floor around the toilet was completely rotted through. Black mold climbed the walls behind the bathtub. The ceiling was sagging and water-stained, with one corner actually dripping steadily into an overflowing pot on the floor. Jesus Christ, I breathed. How long has it been like this? Tyler scratched his head. I don't know, man. Maybe a couple months. A couple months. Dave was taking pictures with his phone, his face pale. Tyler, this is thousands of dollars in damage. The subflooring is completely destroyed. I pulled out my phone and called Mrs. Chen's number from the tenant directory. She answered on the first ring. Mrs. Chen, this is Jake Morrison, your landlord. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm upstairs looking at what I think is the source of your water damage. How bad is the situation in your unit? Her voice was shaky with age but clear. Oh, Mr. Morrison. I've been trying to reach someone for weeks. Half my ceiling fell down yesterday. I've been sleeping in my kitchen because my bedroom is flooded. I closed my eyes. A 67-year-old woman had been sleeping in her kitchen for weeks while my property manager filed paperwork and my tenants ignored phone calls. Mrs. Chen, I'm going to have someone there within the hour to start emergency repairs, and I'll be covering your hotel expenses until this is resolved. Can you pack a bag? After I hung up, I turned to Tyler and Ashley, who were standing in their destroyed bathroom looking like they finally understood the magnitude of what they'd caused. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Here's what's going to happen, I said, looking between Tyler's pale face and Ashley's defiant glare. You two are going to pack your essentials right now. This unit is uninhabitable, and I'm calling the city inspector. Tyler's mouth fell open. You can't kick us out today. We have nowhere to go. I'm not kicking you out because I want to, I replied, gesturing toward the rotted bathroom floor. I'm evacuating you because this place is a health hazard. Look at this mold, Tyler. Look at that ceiling. You've been living in conditions that could literally make you sick. Dave was still taking photos, documenting every angle of the water damage. Jake's right. This bathroom hasn't just been leaking, it's been flooding. Probably for months. The structural damage alone. He shook his head. We're looking at a complete renovation. New subfloor, new drywall, new everything. Ashley finally seemed to grasp the reality of the situation. How much is that going to cost? I pulled up a contractor app on my phone and started punching in estimates. Bathroom renovation, structural repairs, mold remediation, damage to Mrs. Chen's unit downstairs. The numbers kept climbing. We're probably looking at $15,000 to $20,000 in total repairs. The color drained from Tyler's face. $20,000. And that's just for repairs, Dave added grimly. We'll need to put Mrs. Chen in a hotel for at least 2 weeks while the work is done. Jake, her unit is going to need new flooring, new ceiling, probably new furniture to replace what got water damaged. I was doing rough math in my head, and the numbers were staggering. Hotel costs for 2 weeks, emergency repair crews, replacing Mrs. Chen's belongings. This was turning into a financial nightmare that would wipe out months of rental income. This is exactly why landlords require renter's insurance, I said, looking directly at Tyler. Please tell me you have renter's insurance. The silence was answer enough. Of course you don't. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. Tyler, Ashley, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about you anymore. Mrs. Chen has been suffering for weeks because you ignored maintenance requests. She's 67 years old and she's been sleeping in her kitchen because water was literally dripping into her bedroom. Ashley's defensive posture finally cracked. We didn't know it was that bad downstairs. Because you didn't answer your phone when Dave tried to investigate, I shot back. Because you gave the property management company a disconnected number and never updated it. Because you've been too drunk or hungover to deal with your responsibilities. Tyler slumped against the doorframe. Look, man, we'll pay for the repairs. I can ask my dad. Your dad who co-signed your lease. I interrupted. The one whose construction company is probably going to be very interested to learn that his son caused $20,000 in water damage through negligence. That hit home. Tyler's face went completely white. You can't tell my dad about this. I don't have to tell him anything, I said. He's legally responsible as your cosigner. Dave, what's the notification process when there's major property damage? Dave was flipping through his folder. All cosigners get automatically notified of any insurance claims or major repair expenses over $5,000. It's standard procedure. Ashley grabbed Tyler's arm. Your dad is going to kill you. He told you if you screwed up this apartment, you were on your own. I know, Ash. You think I don't know that? My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. Young man, I hate to bother you again, but water is now coming through my kitchen ceiling too. I don't know what to do. I showed the message to Dave. We need emergency contractors here today. And we need Tyler and Ashley out of this unit before they cause any more damage. Where are we supposed to go? Ashley demanded. We don't have money for a hotel, and Tyler's dad doesn't even know we're in trouble yet. That's not my problem to solve, I said, though I felt a twinge of guilt even as I said it. You created this situation through months of negligence. The leak didn't happen overnight, you've been ignoring it while it got worse and worse. Tyler was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. Okay. What if we fix it ourselves? I work at an auto shop, but I've done construction with my dad. We could. Absolutely not, Dave and I said simultaneously. Tyler, Dave continued, this requires professional remediation. We're talking about black mold, structural damage, potential electrical issues if water got into the walls. This isn't a DIY project. I pulled up my insurance company's emergency line. I'm calling this in as a habitability issue. They'll send someone out today to assess the damage and start emergency repairs. I looked at Tyler and Ashley. You have 2 hours to pack your belongings and clear out. After that, this unit is getting sealed for renovation. 2 hours. Ashley's voice cracked. We have 2 years worth of stuff in here. Then you better start packing fast, I said. Because at 1 p.m., this place becomes a construction zone. Tyler suddenly straightened up, a desperate look in his eyes. Wait. What if we take option 2? The voluntary lease break? We forfeit our security deposit, but we get 30 days to move out properly. I shook my head. That was before I discovered you've been ignoring maintenance requests that caused $20,000 in damage to my property. The security deposit doesn't even come close to covering this. So what happens now? Ashley asked quietly. I looked around the destroyed bathroom one more time, thinking about Mrs. Chen sleeping in her kitchen and the mountain of repairs ahead of me. Now you pack your things, find somewhere else to stay, and hope my insurance company doesn't decide to pursue you for damages beyond what your cosigner can cover. Dave's phone rang, and he stepped into the hallway to answer it. Through the thin walls, I could hear him explaining the situation to what sounded like an emergency restoration company. Tyler sank down onto the edge of the bathtub, his head in his hands. My dad's going to disown me. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I thought about Mrs. Chen, and the sympathy evaporated. Tyler, I said, your dad co-signed your lease because he trusted you to be responsible. You violated that trust. That's between you and him. Ashley was staring at the moldy walls like she was seeing them for the first time. How did we let it get this bad? That, I thought, was exactly the right question. But it was about 6 months too late. Dave hung up his phone and walked back into the bathroom, his expression grim. That was emergency restoration services. They can have a crew here in 3 hours, but there's a problem. The water damage has been going on so long that they're required by law to report it to the city as a potential health hazard. What does that mean? Tyler asked, though his voice suggested he already knew it wasn't good news. It means a city inspector has to sign off before any repairs can begin, Dave explained. And if they determine the building has been negligently maintained, they can issue citations against the property owner and potentially condemn units until repairs are completed. I felt my stomach drop. How long does that process take? Anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, depending on their backlog. And Jake. Dave's voice took on that careful tone again. There's something else. The restoration company asked if this is a multi-unit building, and when I said yes, they're recommending inspection of all 3 units. If the water damage is as extensive as it looks, it might have affected the structural integrity of the whole building. Ashley's face went pale. What about Maria? And the old lady downstairs? Mrs. Chen, I corrected automatically, then realized the implications of what Dave was saying. Wait. Are you telling me I might have to evacuate all 3 tenants? It's possible. The inspector will make that call. I pulled out my phone and dialed Maria's number. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear hospital sounds in the background. She was probably starting her shift. Jake? Is everything okay? I saw some guy with a clipboard walking around the building earlier. Maria, where are you right now? At work. I just started my shift. Why? What's wrong? I looked around Tyler's destroyed bathroom and made a decision. Don't come home tonight. Book a hotel room and keep your receipts. I'll reimburse you. What? Why? Jake, you're scaring me. The water damage in Unit B is worse than we thought. Much worse. The city might condemn the whole building until repairs are completed. There was a long pause. Oh my God. For how long? I don't know yet. Maybe a few weeks. Another pause, longer this time. Jake, I can't afford weeks in a hotel. I'm already stretched thin with my student loans and... Maria, stop. I said I'll cover it. Hotel, meals, everything. You're the only tenant who didn't cause this mess, so you're not paying for it. I could hear her exhale shakily. Okay. Thank you. But Jake? What happens to my lease if the building gets condemned? That was exactly the question I'd been dreading. We'll figure it out. Right now, just focus on staying somewhere safe and dry. After I hung up, Tyler was staring at me with something that might have been respect. You're really going to pay for her hotel? Tyler, Maria pays her rent on time, keeps her place clean, and doesn't ignore maintenance requests that cause structural damage. Yeah, I'm going to take care of her. Ashley suddenly spoke up, her voice small. What about us? If the whole building gets condemned. What about you? I asked. Where are we supposed to go? We used our last savings for rent. Tyler's dad doesn't know about any of this yet. My family is in Arizona. Dave was checking something on his phone. Actually, there might be another issue. Jake, if the city inspector determines that the tenant's negligence contributed to the habitability problems, they could be held liable for relocation costs for the other displaced tenants. Tyler's head snapped up. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, the full scope of this disaster finally becoming clear, that you might be on the hook for Maria's hotel costs and Mrs. Chen's hotel costs, on top of the repair bills. Ashley did some quick math. That's 3 people in hotels for weeks. That's thousands of dollars. Try tens of thousands, Dave corrected grimly. Emergency hotel placements, meal allowances, storage for their belongings while repairs are done. He was typing on his phone calculator. We're looking at $300 to $400 per day, per person, for potentially a month. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler looked like he might throw up. Ashley was staring at her hands, and I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. My phone buzzed with another text from Mrs. Chen, Mr. Morrison, I'm afraid my kitchen ceiling just collapsed. I'm standing outside now. What should I do? I showed the message to Dave and Tyler. Tyler read it and actually made a choking sound. That's it, I said, grabbing my keys. Dave, call emergency services and tell them we need immediate temporary housing assistance for Mrs. Chen. Tyler, Ashley, you have exactly 1 hour to pack essentials and get out. This building is officially uninhabitable. As I headed for the door to check on Mrs. Chen, I heard Ashley whisper to Tyler, we're completely screwed, aren't we? Tyler's response followed me down the stairs, we're beyond screwed, Ash. We're looking at bankruptcy. I found Mrs. Chen standing on the sidewalk in her bathrobe, clutching a small suitcase and staring up at her unit's back entrance with the shell-shocked expression of someone whose world had just literally collapsed around her. Water was still dripping from what used to be her kitchen window. Mrs. Chen, I am so incredibly sorry, I said, meaning every word. Are you hurt? She shook her head, but I could see she was trembling. I was making tea when I heard this terrible creaking sound. I barely got out before the whole ceiling came down. Her voice was remarkably steady for someone who'd just been through a traumatic experience, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Did you manage to save anything important? Medications, documents? She held up her suitcase. Some clothes and my heart medication. Everything else. She gestured helplessly toward her flooded unit. My late husband's photographs, my grandmother's china set, 40 years of Christmas decorations. I felt something hot and angry building in my chest as I thought about Tyler and Ashley upstairs, probably arguing about which of their beer cans to pack first while this elderly woman had lost irreplaceable family heirlooms to their negligence. Dave appeared around the corner, phone pressed to his ear. Emergency housing services can have Mrs. Chen at the Hampton Inn within 2 hours, he called out. Indefinite stay, full meal allowance. Thank you, I said, then turned back to Mrs. Chen. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know that I'm going to personally ensure that every single thing that can be replaced gets replaced. And anything that can't. I pulled out my business card and wrote a number on the back. This is my personal cell phone. You call me day or night if you need anything. Mrs. Chen studied the card, then looked up at me with sharp eyes. You're very young to own property, Mr. Morrison. Yes, ma'am. And I'm learning very quickly that being a landlord means being responsible for other people's lives and safety. I failed you, and I'm sorry. She patted my arm with surprising firmness. The failure wasn't yours, dear. I've been listening to those two upstairs for months. This was bound to happen eventually. A white van pulled up with City Housing Inspector painted on the side. A middle-aged woman in a hard hat got out, clipboard in hand, and immediately started photographing the water damage visible from the street. Are you the property owner? She asked, approaching me. Yes, ma'am. Jake Morrison. I handed her my driver's license and property deed information from my phone. Inspector Carol Martinez. I understand we have a habitability crisis here. That's putting it mildly. I gave her a rapid-fire summary of the situation, the ignored maintenance requests, the bathroom that had been flooding for months, Mrs. Chen's collapsed ceiling, the potential mold issues. Inspector Martinez was taking notes as fast as I could talk. And the tenants who caused the initial problem, are they still in the building? They're supposed to be packing. I gave them until 1 p.m. to evacuate. She checked her watch. It's 12:45. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to need to do a complete structural assessment before anyone else enters or exits this building. That includes your problem tenants. As if on cue, Tyler appeared in the front window of Unit B, wrestling with what looked like a massive flat-screen TV. The window was open and he was clearly trying to figure out how to get the TV outside without using the stairs. Inspector Martinez stared up at him. Is that tenant seriously trying to move a television through a second-story window of a building I'm about to condemn? That would be Tyler, I said wearily. Critical thinking isn't his strong suit. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted up at the window. Sir. Step away from the window and exit the building immediately through the front door only. This is a city inspector. Tyler's head appeared in the window. Even from ground level, I could see his panicked expression. But my TV. Sir, evacuate the building now or I'll have the fire department remove you. The TV disappeared back into the apartment, followed by Tyler's head. 30 seconds later, he and Ashley came stumbling out the front door, arms loaded with garbage bags full of clothes, looking like refugees fleeing a disaster zone. Which, I realized, was exactly what they were. Inspector Martinez started toward the building, then stopped and turned back to me. Mr. Morrison, I need you to understand something. Based on what I can see from out here, this isn't going to be a quick fix. You're looking at months of repairs, not weeks. My phone buzzed with a text from my bank, alerting me that my business account balance had dropped below $10,000 due to the emergency hotel charges for Mrs. Chen that had just been processed. Months of repairs. 3 displaced tenants. No rental income. And Tyler's father was about to discover that his son had just cost everyone involved more money than most people made in a year. This was going to get much worse before it got better. Inspector Martinez disappeared into the building with her clipboard and camera, leaving the rest of us standing on the sidewalk like survivors of some domestic disaster. Which, I supposed, we were. Tyler and Ashley had managed to pile their belongings into what looked like every garbage bag they owned, a detail that wasn't lost on me, considering how this whole mess had started. Tyler kept glancing nervously at his phone, and I had a pretty good idea why. Your dad still doesn't know, does he? I asked. Tyler's face went pale. I keep trying to figure out how to tell him. Hey Dad, remember that apartment you co-signed for? Well, I destroyed it and now I owe $20,000 and made a 67-year-old woman homeless. Yeah, that's going to go over real well. Ashley was sitting on one of their garbage bags, staring at her own phone. My sister in Phoenix says we can crash there for a while, but we'd have to pay for our own flights. And Tyler, we literally have $180 in our checking account. My phone rang. Dave. Jake, I've got some very bad news, he said without preamble. I just got off the phone with your insurance company. They're sending an adjuster, but they're already indicating this might not be fully covered. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean, not fully covered? Gradual water damage caused by tenant negligence. It's specifically excluded in most policies unless you can prove you took reasonable steps to prevent it. Since Tyler and Ashley ignored multiple maintenance requests. I closed my eyes. How much are we talking about? The insurance might cover emergency displacement costs for Mrs. Chen, but the structural repairs, mold remediation, lost rental income, you could be looking at $30,000 out of pocket. Ashley had been listening to my side of the conversation, and her face went completely white. Did he just say $30,000? Tyler's phone suddenly buzzed. He looked at the screen and his hand started shaking. It's my dad. He's calling. Answer it, Ashley whispered. Tyler stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. On the 4th ring, it went to voicemail. Immediately, it started ringing again. He knows something's wrong, Tyler said. My dad doesn't call twice in a row unless it's an emergency. Inspector Martinez emerged from the building, and her expression told me everything I needed to know before she opened her mouth. Mr. Morrison, I'm issuing an immediate condemnation order for the entire structure. No one enters this building until extensive repairs are completed and re-inspected. She handed me an official-looking document. The structural damage is far worse than what's visible. The support beams under the bathroom have been compromised, and there's evidence of electrical damage where water got into the walls. Tyler's phone rang for the 3rd time. This time, he answered it. Hey Dad, he said weakly. What's up? I could hear his father's voice even from 6 feet away, loud, concerned, and getting louder by the second. Something about, insurance company called, and property damage claim, and what the hell is going on? Tyler met my eyes with a look of pure panic. Dad, I can explain. The voice on the other end exploded into what sounded like construction worker profanity. Tyler held the phone away from his ear, his face cycling through various shades of white and green. Inspector Martinez was still talking to me, but I was watching Tyler's world collapse in real time. His father's voice was now audible to everyone on the sidewalk, and the words, disown, bankruptcy, and lawsuit were coming through clearly. Mr. Morrison. Inspector Martinez repeated. Did you hear what I said about the timeline? I forced myself to focus on her. I'm sorry, what timeline? Minimum 4 months before this building will be habitable again. And that's assuming you can get contractors to start immediately. She gestured toward Tyler, who was now sitting on the curb while his father continued yelling through the phone. I hope you have good lawyers, because this is going to get ugly fast. Tyler finally hung up and looked at all of us with tears in his eyes. My dad's driving over here right now. He says the insurance company called him as the co-signer, and he wants to see exactly what I did to his reputation. Ashley put her arm around him. How long do we have? Tyler checked his phone for his dad's location. He's 20 minutes away. I looked at the condemned building, the pile of garbage bags, Mrs. Chen being helped into a taxi headed for the hotel, and Tyler's tear-stained face. 20 minutes before this situation went from disaster to complete catastrophe. Tyler's dad arrived in exactly 18 minutes, driving a massive black pickup truck with Brennan Construction painted on the side in bold yellow letters. He parked it sideways across 2 spaces, slammed the door hard enough to rattle windows, and strode toward us like a man preparing for war. Tom Brennan was everything Tyler wasn't, 6'4", broad shoulders, steel gray hair, and the kind of presence that made people instinctively step back. He was wearing work boots and a flannel shirt with concrete dust on the sleeves, and his face was the color of an overripe tomato. Tyler James Brennan, he said in a voice that could cut through steel, you better start talking right goddamn now. Tyler shrank back against Ashley, who suddenly looked like she wanted to disappear entirely. Dad, Shut up. Tom's eyes swept over the condemned building, the inspector's van, the pile of garbage bags, and finally landed on me. You the landlord? Jake Morrison, I said, extending my hand. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, Mr. Brennan. He ignored my hand completely. How much? Sir. How much is my idiot son going to cost me? The insurance company gave me some bullshit runaround about extensive water damage and tenant negligence. I want numbers. I glanced at Tyler, who was staring at his shoes. The initial estimate is around $30,000 for structural repairs, mold remediation, and tenant relocation costs. But Mr. Brennan, that number could go higher once contractors get inside and... $30,000. Tom's voice was deadly quiet. He turned to Tyler. $30,000. Tyler finally found his voice. Dad, we didn't know it was that bad. The bathroom was just a little leak. A little leak? Tom gestured toward the condemned building. Son, I've been in construction for 25 years. That ain't damage from a little leak. That's damage from months of ignoring a major problem. Inspector Martinez approached with her final paperwork. Mr. Morrison, I need signatures on these condemnation forms. And sir, she addressed Tom, are you the co-signer on the lease? Unfortunately, yes. Then you'll need to sign acknowledgement of the damages as well. City regulations require it when there's a co-signer involved in habitability violations. Tom snatched the clipboard from her hands and scanned the documents. His face somehow managed to get even redder. Tyler, what's this line about pattern of maintenance avoidance and multiple unanswered contact attempts? Ashley jumped in before Tyler could answer. The property manager was calling Tyler's old phone number. We never got the messages. Tom's laugh was completely devoid of humor. And you never thought to update your contact information with your landlord? What kind of half-assed? He stopped himself, probably remembering there were witnesses present. You know what? We're handling this right now. He pulled out his own phone and dialed a number. Mike. Tom Brennan. I need an emergency crew at 1247 Maple Grove Drive right now. No, not tomorrow, Mike. Right now. My kid destroyed a building, and I need damage assessment from someone who knows what they're looking at. While Tom arranged for his own contractors to inspect the damage, Tyler's phone started buzzing with texts. He glanced at the screen and his face went completely white. What now? Ashley asked. Tyler showed her his phone. I could see multiple message notifications, all from numbers he apparently recognized. Words getting around, Tyler said quietly. That's my supervisor at the shop, my cousin Derek, 3 of my buddies. Dad, how does everyone already know about this? Tom finished his call and looked at Tyler with something between disgust and disappointment. Because, son, when you screw up this badly in a small town, people talk. The insurance adjuster who called me. His wife works at the auto shop with your supervisor. Inspector Martinez there. Her husband plays poker with my foreman Mike every Thursday. He pocketed his phone and turned to me. Mr. Morrison, here's what's going to happen. My crew will be here in an hour to assess the real damage. Whatever it costs to fix this mess, I'll cover it. But Tyler. He looked directly at his son. You and I are going to have a very long conversation about responsibility, and when we're done, you're going to pay me back every single penny, even if it takes you the next 10 years. Tyler's phone buzzed again. This time, when he looked at it, he actually made a choking sound. Now what? Tom demanded. Tyler held up his phone with a shaking hand. It's a Facebook notification. Someone posted a video of me trying to get the TV out the window while the inspector was yelling at me. Tom grabbed the phone and watched the video. His expression went from angry to mortified to furious in about 15 seconds. 6,000 views in 20 minutes, he said slowly. Tyler, you didn't just destroy a building. You made us both look like complete idiots in front of the entire town. This was getting worse by the minute. Tom's construction crew arrived like a SWAT team responding to an emergency. 3 trucks, 5 guys in hard hats, and enough equipment to rebuild half the neighborhood. Within 10 minutes, they had ladders up against the building and were taking measurements while muttering things like, Christ almighty, and, how did they let it get this bad? I was standing with Tom, watching his foreman Mike document the damage, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Jake Morrison. This is Patricia Williams from Channel 7 News. We received reports about a building condemnation involving tenant negligence and significant property damage. Would you be available for a brief interview? I looked around the scene, condemned building, inspector's van, Tyler sitting on the curb looking like his world had ended, and now construction workers swarming the property. How did you hear about this? Social media, actually. There's a video circulating of someone trying to move furniture through a window while a city inspector was ordering evacuation. It's gotten quite a bit of attention. Tom was watching me, and when I mentioned Channel 7, his face went from red to purple. He gestured for Tyler to come over. Tyler, Tom said in a voice that could strip paint, the news wants to interview us about your little stunt. How many people do you think saw that video by now? Tyler checked his phone again. 14,000 views. And it's been shared 847 times. 14,000, Tom repeated slowly. My business phone has been ringing non-stop for the past 20 minutes. You know what my potential clients are asking me, son? They're asking if the guy who can't maintain his own apartment is really the best choice to build their custom homes. The full implications were starting to hit me too. Tyler, what's your last name on Facebook? Brennan. Tyler Brennan. But Dad, I've got privacy settings. Privacy settings don't matter when you're hanging halfway out a window with a 65-inch TV while a city inspector is screaming at you, Tom snapped. Everyone can see that video, which means everyone knows you're Tom Brennan's son. Mike, Tom's foreman, jogged over with his clipboard and a grim expression. Tom, you need to see this. The bathroom floor didn't just rot through, it collapsed into the basement unit. We're looking at structural damage to the main support beam. Tom snatched the clipboard. How bad? Bad. The weight of that cast iron bathtub, sitting on rotted subflooring for months, stressed the whole frame. We might need to sister new beams, which means tearing into walls in all 3 units. Mike shook his head. I'm thinking 60, maybe 70,000, not 30. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler actually made a whimpering sound. 70,000, Tom said quietly. Then louder, $70,000. Ashley, who had been trying to stay invisible during this whole exchange, finally spoke up. Mr. Brennan, Tyler didn't know. Miss, Tom cut her off, I don't care what Tyler knew or didn't know. I care that my son signed a lease making him responsible for this property, and I co-signed that lease making me responsible for him. He turned back to Tyler. Do you understand what you've done? You've potentially bankrupted yourself, damaged my business reputation, and made us both internet famous for all the wrong reasons. My phone buzzed with another call. This time it was Dave, and his voice was tight with panic. Jake, we have a problem. Mrs. Chen's daughter just called. She's driving up from Dallas, and she's threatening to sue everyone involved for endangering her mother's life. I looked at Tyler, who was now pale green and swaying slightly. Define everyone, Dave. You as the property owner, Tyler and Ashley as the negligent tenants, Tom Brennan as the co-signer, and me as the property manager for failing to follow up properly. Dave's voice cracked slightly. She's a personal injury lawyer, Jake. This is what she does for a living. The blood drained from my face as Dave's words sank in. A personal injury lawyer? How did we not know Mrs. Chen's daughter was a lawyer? Because it wasn't relevant until her 67-year-old mother's ceiling collapsed and she had to flee her home in her bathrobe, Dave said tersely. Her name is Jennifer Chin Rodriguez, and according to her voicemail, she specializes in landlord negligence cases. Tom overhead and grabbed my phone. Dave, this is Tom Brennan, Tyler's father. What kind of lawsuit exposure are we looking at here? Mr. Brennan, I'm not qualified to. Cut the crap, Dave. You've dealt with this before. What's the worst case scenario? There was a long pause before Dave answered. Elderly tenant endangered by habitability crisis, forced displacement, property damage to personal belongings, emotional distress. We could be looking at 6 figures. Easily. Tyler, who had been listening to this conversation, suddenly lurched toward the bushes and threw up. Ashley rushed over to hold his hair back while he retched. 6 figures, Tom repeated slowly. On top of the $70,000 in repairs. He looked at his son, who was now dry heaving into Mrs. Chen's prize roses. Tyler, you didn't just screw up. You created a legal nightmare that could destroy 3 businesses and bankrupt 2 families. My phone started buzzing with notifications. The Facebook video had apparently crossed some kind of viral threshold, because I was getting tagged in posts from people I hadn't spoken to since college. The comments ranged from, "Is this your rental property, Jake?" to, "Dude, your tenant is famous for being an idiot." Inspector Martinez approached with another clipboard. "Mr. Morrison, I need to inform you that I'm required to file a report with the State Housing Authority. When structural damage this extensive involves elderly tenants and potential negligence." She shrugged apologetically. "It triggers an automatic investigation." Tom's foreman Mike came over, his hard hat in his hands. "Tom, I hate to pile on, but we found something else. There's evidence of electrical damage where water got into the junction box. This is turning into a full electrical system replacement too." "How much more?" Tom asked in a voice that suggested he might start throwing punches soon. "Another 15, maybe 20,000. And Tom." Mike lowered his voice. "The city's going to require permits for everything. Electrical, structural, plumbing, environmental for the mold. We're looking at months of inspections and bureaucracy." Tyler stumbled back from the bushes, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I never meant for." "Tyler, shut up," Tom snapped. "Every word out of your mouth right now is just making this worse." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer. We need legal representation before Mrs. Chen's daughter gets here." Ashley was scrolling through her own phone, her face getting paler by the second. "Tyler, the video is on TikTok now too. And Twitter. Someone made a meme out of you with the TV." She showed him the screen. "It says, when you're getting evicted but your priorities are straight." "How many views?" Tyler asked weakly. 43,000 on TikTok. The Twitter version has been retweeted 8,000 times. Tom looked at the phone, then at Tyler, then at the condemned building. "Son, in one morning, you've managed to become internet famous, destroy a building, potentially bankrupt our family, and turn my construction company into a joke." He pocketed his phone. "And it's only 2:30 p.m. I'm almost afraid to ask what other disasters you can create before dinner." A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, and a woman in an expensive suit got out, clutching a briefcase and scanning the scene with the focused intensity of a predator who'd just spotted wounded prey. Tom sighed deeply. "I'm guessing that's Mrs. Chen's daughter." Tyler looked at the approaching lawyer, then at his father, then at me. "Dad, I think I'm going to throw up again." "Hold it together, son," Tom said grimly. "Because our real problems are just getting started." Jennifer Chin Rodriguez approached our group like a prosecutor approaching the defendant's table. She was probably in her 40s, impeccably dressed despite the 3-hour drive from Dallas, and carrying herself with the kind of confidence that suggested she'd never lost a case she actually wanted to win. "Which one of you is Jake Morrison?" she asked, her voice crisp and professional. "That would be me," I said, stepping forward. "Ms. Chin Rodriguez, I want you to know how sorry I am about what happened to your mother. I've already arranged for her hotel stay in." "Mr. Morrison," she cut me off, "my mother is 67 years old. This morning she was nearly killed when her ceiling collapsed. She's been sleeping in her kitchen for weeks because water was flooding her bedroom." She pulled out her phone and showed me photos that made my stomach clench. "These are pictures of her unit that she took yesterday. Would you like to explain how you allowed this to happen?" Before I could respond, Tom stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm Tom Brennan. My son Tyler here is the tenant who caused this mess. I'm prepared to take full responsibility." "Mr. Brennan, your son's negligence endangered my mother's life," she interrupted. "This isn't about taking responsibility. This is about accountability." She turned back to me. "Mr. Morrison, as the property owner, you had a legal duty to ensure habitability. You failed. Spectacularly." Tyler finally found his voice. "Look, lady, we didn't mean for anyone to get hurt." Jennifer's eyes fixed on Tyler like a laser. "Mr. Brennan, are you aware that ignoring maintenance requests that endanger other tenants can result in criminal negligence charges?" Tyler's face went white. "Criminal charges? Absolutely. My mother could have been killed when that ceiling collapsed. If I can prove you deliberately ignored warnings about water damage." She let the implication hang in the air. Tom grabbed Tyler's arm. "Son, don't say another word without a lawyer present." But Tyler, panicking now, kept talking. "We weren't ignoring anything. We never got any calls about." "Tyler." Tom snapped. "Shut up." But it was too late. Jennifer was already taking notes. "So you admit there were supposed to be calls about the maintenance issues?" I could see this spiraling out of control, and suddenly I realized something. All this time, I'd been thinking like a victim. Poor me, my property got damaged, my tenants screwed me over. But standing here, watching a 67-year-old woman's daughter fight for justice while Tyler made excuses and his dad tried to throw money at the problem, I finally understood what this was really about. Mrs. Chin could have died. While I was annoyed about garbage on my lawn, she was living in dangerous conditions because my tenants were too selfish and irresponsible to answer a phone call. Ms. Chin Rodriguez, I said, you're absolutely right. Your mother deserves better than excuses and financial settlements. She deserves justice. Tom stared at me. Jake, what are you doing? I pulled out my phone and opened my property management app. I'm doing what I should have done months ago. I scrolled to Tyler and Ashley's lease and hit the eviction button. Tyler, Ashley, you're officially evicted. Not for lease violations, not for property damage, but for endangering another human being through your negligence. Tyler's mouth fell open. You can't. I can and I am. You ignored maintenance requests that could have killed someone. You turned my property into a health hazard. You've cost 3 people their homes because you couldn't be bothered to return a phone call. I turned to Tom. Mr. Brennan, your son isn't just irresponsible. He's dangerous. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to avoid a lawsuit. Tom's anger deflated into something that looked like relief. You know what, Morrison? You're right. Tyler, you heard the man. You're out. Don't call me for bail money, don't ask for lawyer fees, and don't expect me to co-sign anything ever again. Ashley finally spoke up. Tyler, your dad just disowned you. No, Tom corrected, I just stopped enabling him. There's a difference. Jennifer was watching this exchange with professional interest. Gentlemen, while this accountability moment is refreshing, it doesn't change the legal realities here. You're right, I said. So let me be very clear. Mrs. Chen will never pay another dime in rent anywhere. I'm setting up a fund to cover her housing for life. Tyler's actions displaced her, and Tyler's actions will be paying for the consequences. Forever. Tyler's face went ashen. For life. I can't afford. Then you better figure it out, I said. Because Ms. Chin Rodriguez, I'm prepared to testify that your mother's displacement was entirely preventable and entirely the result of Tyler Brennan's negligence. I have documentation, video evidence, and witnesses. For the first time since she'd arrived, Jennifer smiled. Now we're talking. 6 months later, Tyler and Ashley were living in a studio apartment across town, both working double shifts to pay off the judgment. The viral video of Tyler with the TV had actually helped, it became key evidence of his priorities and mindset. Mrs. Chin got a beautiful new apartment, fully paid for by a settlement fund that Tyler would be contributing to until he was old enough to collect Social Security. Maria moved into a completely renovated unit with a 2-year lease at below market rates. And me? I learned that being a landlord isn't just about collecting rent. It's about remembering that you're responsible for people's homes, their safety, and their lives. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even. It's making sure justice actually gets served.